G'day, Nick here, Animal Engineering. Welcome back to the channel. On this episode we are going to tackle the rest of the brackets for the rear end of the chassis. So the last of the control arm tabs, the rear sway bar tabs, and I've had a bit of a look. Most of them are the same as the front. They fit really good, but this front one is an absolute shit show. I don't know what's happened here, but if you get, let's see, so you can see there's a big gap here, there's also a big gap here, so that's on the front one. See also the back one, big gap there, and then that's just completely wrong as well. Also, they are supposed to be symmetrical side to side, and as you can see there, they are not. Also, the top bracket is this one, which the slot is not centered in the bracket either, so I don't know what was going on with this front mount, but it is just all kinds of messed up. So I need to remake all 6 of these pieces for both sides, which is a shame. Everything else is fitting really good, no issues whatsoever, but yeah, just this one on both sides is just, oh, it's crazy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring a line down from this flat edge, say 10 mil, and then from this edge in 10 mil, and then we'll sand it up and we'll get it located on the bolt hole, and then I should be able to measure down to where it will touch the chassis and across, and then I can project some lines back in Fusion. I'll bring these files back in, and then I'll make those adjustments, and then we'll get it on the plasma table and cut them out. So, bit of a bummer, but you know, if I lock that off, I can use that another project one day. It can go in my bits box. So first off, I'm going to correct this issue. Rightio, well, while they are pickling away in the vinegar, getting all the rust and meal scale off, we'll carry on with the rest of it. So, as I say, these fit pretty much perfect, really. Haven't cleaned them up yet. See, just holding it up there, it's, yeah, just holding it up there, that's nice and central in that slot, which is what we want. So that's, I guess, another good sign that the chassis is where it needs to be as far as the computer goes. So we'll just buzz through now, tackle these on, and we'll weld them out. Well, I've just come up to this top arm mount. I've welded the bottom one on. Now, I've just gone to do the top one and I'm not happy at all with it. It is horrendous. So the factory subframe's kind of got like a little divot down and it matches it. Now, when I've drawn the side profile of this, I've picked a plane off of the top of this, and somewhere along the line it hasn't worked. So you can see under here there's a big gap. And also if you look from the top, it's so yeah, looking down from the top it's just ugly as hell as well. So I think I'm going to trim it back and I'm going to go to the pan brake, put a bend in it, and then I'll cut it back, and then that way I can sort of weld it along this edge and it can flow with the actual chassis itself, because at the moment it's pretty damn ugly. So I'll mark that up, we'll go over to the pan brake, we'll bend it, and then we'll get it welded on. Alright, well while we've been jamming away, I've got that top one done, and got the other side done as well. I think you'll agree that looks much nicer than just having that massive triangle on the top. That wasn't going to fly at all. I've also got this mid one done here with the toe adjuster. So that's all done. Now, I've made some pieces up for the sway bar. The sway bar is going to be a nightmare, I feel. It's gonna clash with a lot of stuff, but I've made some brackets up. They're in the vinegar as well. So once they are finished pickling away, we'll get them on, and then we'll be able to see how much of an issue this sway bar is going to be. Also, I don't think I mentioned in the last episode, so when I put it back in the jig, I actually had to notch these pipes out to clear the frame. So I think you can see that. Yeah, that could also be a future nick problem. Basically, when I drew it up, I just done like a top-down view and extruded that up, and that's sort of how I got the whole shape. But if you go to the actual subframe, this bottom one's actually in under, which I think on this front edge here should be fine, but the back edge I may end up having to do like a little bit of a relief in there, but I'm not really going to know until we get all the suspension and everything on and we start cycling it through. I feel the sway bar might be okay if it wasn't getting airbagged and going through a massive travel, but yeah, we'll wait and see how that pans out, but I'm expecting that to be quite a bit of work, which is unfortunate. So I think that's about it for today. Go through, have a bit of a clean up, and we'll cut back in the morning once the stuff's been in the vinegar overnight, and it should be all nice and clean. Okay, got them all cleaned up, looking nice and pretty. So we'll get it all bolted up and burn these in, and then we'll go over this sway bar schmozzle. It's not real good. But we'll burn these on and then we'll address that situation. Right, well that is the last of the control arm tabs burned into the frame. I've gone ahead and done the other side as well. Everything's fitting nice and good. Everything's fitting nice and good to the jig, so pretty happy that that should be alright. So we'll have a look at this sway bar catastrophe. So the rear sway bar is supposed to go onto these two tabs. There and there, like brackets pulled off the rear subframe. In my original design, these two little drop arm bits weren't in there. So at the moment they are getting in the way. I was having a bit of a play around with the sway bar, and see this bit sort of sticks out a bit, so I took that off. The problem is it physically won't actually go through. So pushing it through, it's catching on this little collar. So I did do a quick Google search because I thought, well, I'll just cut that off and I can make something that goes on there to replace it. And you can actually buy little collars that bolt over the sway bar. Even with that being cut, I would still need to notch out the bottom of this centre bracket to actually be able to slide it through. So there's extra work there. Now, one of the biggest issues I feel, I'm kind of assuming that when it's in its position that this arm will be flat. Now, you sort of see that sort of kicks forward, which if I look through will have clearance, but I feel because it's going to be getting airbagged, this is actually going to be rotating quite a lot. So this bit here will move forward, you know what I mean? So that will sort of rock forward, so when you say airbag down, that'll come up and that whole thing will rock forward. So as you go psh, psh, and drop down, feel like it's going to swing into the top of this bracket as well. So there's a lot of work to get the factory Holden one to work. I did want to maintain all the factory stuff, just so if it's a bit sway I can just go online and order a heavy duty sway bar. But it's also kind of going to get in the way for where I'm going to, well, where I plan on running the exhaust. So I had a bit of a sleep on it overnight, and I do remember at some point in the past I seen like a sway bar style that was just a round rod with splines on the end that had like little brackets that went onto them. So it's just like a round rod, which would work really good for this frame. So I had a bit of a Google. I haven't actually been able to find it, but I know I've seen it somewhere. So I'm just got to keep hunting around until I can find one. And then I think that way I can tuck it up nice and tight into that sort of hollow at the top there, and that'll give me enough room to run my exhaust under and then out the side. It's a bit of a shame. Yeah, it's a bit of a shame that I can't use that sway bar. I could, but like, it's a lot of extra work to actually make it work, and I feel that the way it's actually going to go in there and interact and move around, it's just going to be more work than it's worth. And a nice straight bar is going to look aesthetically nicer as well. Yeah, I think in the future we'll come back and we'll revisit that sway bar situation once we get a bit more of an idea and work out what I'm going to do and get some parts. So this episode's probably not been the most entertaining, just welding some tabs on, but it is another step done. All the control arm tabs are welded on now, so I think on the next episode I'm going to tackle the rear spring mounts. Now, I haven't designed them in Fusion. I got to that point and it kind of fried my brain trying to work out how to do it on the computer. So I'm going to go old school and basically just use a jig and some cardboard, and we'll make something up and then cut it out. And I don't think it'll be too big a job. And then basically once they're done, once those spring carriers are done, that's basically the whole back of the chassis done. And then we'll get the engine in, we'll make some gearbox mounts, drive shaft mounts. So yeah. As always, if you've made it this far into the video, thank you very, very much for watching. and we'll see you on the next one.